Hey guys, I'm gonna kind of get myself out of the way here a little bit. So this is the file that I wanted you to read, and I thought it might be just as good to look through it together instead. So let's take a look at some main points here. I've got the file up on the screen so you can see it. Even with all the foreign problems that they had, so the opium, the British, that kind of just nonsense going on, that was not necessarily the only and the biggest problem that the Qing dynasty had. Um, Other problems, you probably love it when I move the camera like that. And I touched my eyes again, and the lights went off. Wow, it is the end of the world. Okay. Um, the foreigners weren't even the biggest problem that the Chinese had. So look at this. By mid 19th century, China's population reached 450 million. It's 3 times more than they had in 1500. So I know it's hard to think about those numbers and dates and everything, but when a population increases, everything else needs to increase too. Money, food, water, places to put sewage. When people poop, where do you put it when there's a lot more people? Roads, farmland, houses, etc. The military to protect a bigger country. So it was getting tricky. And so what was the result of this? I think I can draw on this. Ooh. Famine, land shortage. So if all the farms are already owned by families and now the population gets bigger, how do all these new people have a chance to own a farm too? There might not be enough land for everybody to own a farm. Famine, not enough food for all these people. Impoverished, so really poor rural population. How did the Qing government respond? Taxes, oh no. Inflation, your money wasn't worth as much as it used to be. And greedy local officials, corruption, right? People can be bribed into doing their job or not doing their job. So this stuff was not great. So what was the consequence? Secret societies and local military strongmen kind of took things up. A warlord could rise up and say, we're sick of the government. I will take better care of you than they will. And he'd get a bunch of peasants that would join him. So this period of time, about the time of the Opium War, tons of rebellions, not just the Taiping Rebellion, but other rebellions. So now let's take a look here. In the period of time from 1779 to 1850, that alone, there was a 56% increase in people. So for every 100 people before, now there's 156. This is huge. Population doubled just leading up to this period of time. So the more population, the more of these problems they had because they were not ready for them. All right, let me check my time here real quick. I'm not very good at juggling this and everything else. So now let's take a look at some pictures here on how bad were things. This is a picture of an ancestral home, probably been in this guy's family for forever, dismantling the shingles and selling them, selling the walls, taking the house apart and selling it. This guy is measuring a field right here so he can give away chunks of land. This is a picture of people stripping off the bark off of trees and digging up grass roots to eat it as food. They were so hungry. They were starving. Opium was a big problem because with the opium addictions that were around, farmers were not producing like they used to. Who does most of the farm work? Young men. What were the young men doing? Smoking opium, being high. So they were literally running out of food in China at this point. It was not a good time to be Chinese. Down here, we'll skip this one. These were common images, and these things, most of these were actually wood block printing, which meant they were artwork that was carved into a block of wood, right? And then they could smear ink on it and they could just stick it onto a page and they could reproduce a bunch of these pictures. And so these would go into the hands of American missionaries, and the missionaries would send this back home to America and say, look how bad things are in China. Guys, round up some money and send it to us and we'll use it to buy food and supplies for these poor peasants. So here's a picture of a lady who just gave birth to a baby and is pretty much dying. You look at the person who did survive, skin and bones, right? Things are really, really rough. Let's see, we're about out of time here. I'm going to copy and paste this story. I want you to read this story. I'm not going to read it through with you. And then I want you to answer the question in a little more detail. Why were people willing to follow Hong Xiuquan? If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe, ring that bell so we can keep more great content coming your way.